What's up? It's Sierra.
Hey, it's Ebony.
And welcome to the Real Play Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Real Play Podcast. This is Ebony.
And this is Sierra.
So we're so excited today, guys. We're gonna talk about
the WAP.
The WAP video, and my first thought was like, we're gonna talk about sex, but not in the way that you guys think.
Exactly.
And so Sierra and I thought it would be a good thing to bring on a special guest. And so we have Mr. Q here, who is going to help us talk about sex as it relates to the church. But for now, I want you, Mr. Q, if you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay. Hello, everyone in the podcast world. Look, I just want to say my name is Q, Mr. Q, and I'm coming on the podcast with these two dynamic young ladies to talk about pretty much any subject they want to. They told me what they're talking about. So I'm like, okay. So I'm going to take a dive into this with them. Just to give you a little background about me, I guess I would be considered kind of an OG of Baltimore City. Came up in the ranks, in Baltimore. And as far as the church world, I was one of those children back in the day that was drugged to church. Parents took me back and forth to church. Gave us a whole lot of rules and disciplines. I thank God for it. But just like a lot of youth then and now, we fought against some of the prohibitions. We kind of did some things on the sneak, on the sneak tip. So know about the church world. Also been out there in the streets a bit. So I kind of come from that avenue. So I'm here to just give any type of information, interaction with this call with these two dynamic young ladies. I am grateful for the call. So ladies, I'm here to help you and your audience. And I'm looking for you guys to help me too. Because one thing I've learned is I'm educated a lot. And any older people up there, because the ladies will tell you, I'm a little bit older than them. When we take time to listen to our younger people, we will learn so much.
Amen.
So, Mr. Q, thank you for being brave and coming on the podcast. Because the texts I sent you of the questions
last night,
he was gonna write back and be like, absolutely not, or at least say he didn't ask any follow-up questions.
No,
and they were a little
risque.
The questions that I sent, and I was just like, oh, send. Okay, so I was expecting some follow-up. You didn't say anything, but that's cool.
No. And you know why I didn't? Because I wanted to. I told you I didn't want to shock you. You probably weren't about shocking me. Mm-hmm. But we're in the real world, and I think a lot of times churches as a whole has missed that. Everything that we dance around in the church, when people leave those doors, they're seeing it. But when we go into the church, sometimes we act like that world don't exist.
Exactly.
So that's why I want to come from that place. Yes, everything you guys deal with, I deal with to some degree. Now, because of my years and maturity, some things are not of interest to me anymore. It's kind of like been there, done there, got the t-shirt. I'm not going to hang out in the club. If I did go to a club, I'd probably be sitting in the corner and leave after the first 45 minutes. Because I couldn't dance all night because I had to go to work in the morning. I couldn't go outside and just run around because all of a sudden, I'm aching and paining all day. Anyway, let me back up.
32. Listen, I'm 32 and
feel the same way.
I can't
do it.
I can't do it like I used to. So Sierra, can you lead us into?
I'll go ahead and jump into what we want to talk about. So I'm not sure how versed you are on culture as far as the music culture, the hip hop culture. There's a recent drop of a video called WAP, W-A-P. I am not going to go into what the letters stand for. If you want to look that up, I will let you look that up. But basically the video has Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, and they are dancing.
Pussy?
I mean, yeah, okay. So you are a little more versed than I thought for your age, okay?
Sierra was like,
I was gonna leave it out because it's like talking to my daddy. My daddy's 65. I didn't know. But so yes, the video came out. Everyone's talking about the video, how this whole women empowerment versus sexualizing women versus it's okay, but it's not okay. Really, when we start to think about it and peel back the layers, Ebony and I started talking about how you go to church, they don't talk about sex. Your parents don't really talk to you about sex. Then you see all these videos and you hear all these lyrics, and not even just Megan and Cardi, even back in the day, like Adina Howard or Next, and even further back, all those songs are overly sexualized. And that's what's teaching our children and our young adults and everybody what sex is and how to have sex when it should be taught in the home and in the church. So that's why we wanted to bring you on to kind of get your viewpoint on the topic of one, what are your thoughts on why the church is missing that link of talking to adults and children? We'll start with that.
Well, actually, can I actually interject? When we were talking about it yesterday, I was thinking about it today, actually, and I grew up in the church. And so I was thinking, I used to listen to 90s songs. This video, for some people is bad. I actually didn't have any thoughts where I was like, oh my God, look at them dance. Because I sung worse. I've said worse, because I grew up in the 90s. I grew up on certain music. But I think, as I was talking to Sierra yesterday, she was like, Ebony, you have to realize too, where you are in your Christian walk, you are more mature than some people. So where you can probably watch some things and it might not bother you as much, other people will watch that same video and stumble because they're not as far along as you. So I just want to point that out too.
Okay. Everything. I'm glad you guys had this conversation because, you probably was surprised that I knew what the term was.
I definitely was.
And also, you'd probably be surprised that I actually like Cardi B.
All right, come on, Cardi B.
Now, I'm going to tell you what. Now, I like Cardi B.
What about Megan, though?
I don't really know her. I heard that name and everything. But when they talk about Cardi B, look, she was on the TV show at Love and Hip Hop.
Love and Hip Hop. Mm-hmm.
And, we be cruising the stations and, watch it. I like her because she was so real on that show. Supposed to be a reality show, but she was just so funny that she was making light of the fact that we on this show and everybody's trying to be serious, and she was not serious. And then she would get with her sister Hennessy, and they would start with that yang, And I used to love it. She was hilarious. I just liked her, that kind of raw energy she had. Now, is she a sinner and all those things? We could go down that road. I'm not saying that she's saved, and I'm not unsaved because I say I kind of like her because she's candid. Anyway, with that said, the video. When I see it, I'm like, oh no, Cardi, God, this is over the top. But you know what? I'm not saying I promote the video because there is a lot of education and conversation that needs to be had, especially me being in the clergy. To anybody, I'm not going to tell anybody be that reckless with their sexuality. But I will say this, it's been done before. It's been done by men in so many times, so many avenues. I'm talking about way back in my day.
Yeah.
I remember when I was even a little bit younger than you guys, I was like in my 20s. There was this rapper out called Blowfly. And some of his lyrics was like really off the chart. But now there's kind of these are women doing this. So now it's kind of like a double standard. These women talk about sexuality. Because you got to remember way back then, back when I was younger, women weren't supposed to enjoy sex. Men were.
Well, since welcome to 2020, and in the church, per the church, we're not supposed to enjoy anything. Like, pleasure is for the man. We're supposed to get married and do whatever he wants us to do.
Right. So, there's a whole sex talk I could have around that. But one of your questions where y'all asking about, kind of the church's position on that or lack of taking a position on it. I think one of the things, because the church has deemed some things taboo, and that's one of them. And think about it. The things that we taught, and when I say we, I'm talking about people in general, actually, not just the church. talk the least about are the things that are most natural. Those are going to the bathroom. Everybody does it, but we don't talk about it. And sex. Everybody does it or wants it, but we don't talk about it. And they're some of the most natural things in the world. However, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. A lot of times, churches have been guilty of anything that we can't explain. We vilify it. We put a strong stigma on it. Because if I can shame you on a subject, now I don't have to deal with it because I will silence you because of the shame I put on it.
And what gets me is the same people that's silencing and shaming people, is the very ones that's out there doing whatever and sinning, but coming into church pretending like they're holier than thou, and that's a whole different conversation.
Now, I think we can agree. Well, I don't know. Let me see. Do we agree? Biblical principle teaches us that the sexual experience should be reserved for a man and a woman in a married situation.
Agree.
Should be married. That's scripture. Now, outside of that, beyond that, that's what the church should be teaching and preaching. But now, when a man and woman are married and they're going to experience sex as a man and wife, what are the do's and the don'ts?
That's the thing. The church does not teach you beyond getting married, saving yourself for marriage. That's it. Well,
and for a couple of reasons, and I'm not, giving anybody a pass or anything like that, but you think about it, I actually do marriage counseling as well, premarital counseling for couples, get married. And I tell them anything they do in the privacy of their bedroom is their business. There are rules that I think you should strongly apply. First of all, you should not do anything without the other person's consent. Because if you do anything without the other person's consent, that's abuse. Anything the other person is not comfortable with and you force it, that's abuse. Also, you should not bring in any third party. You're bringing anybody else into that mix, you are tainting your marriage. You're tainting your marriage situation. Now, I know in this day and time where people, wife would say, happy birthday, honey, we're going to have a threesome for your birthday. People do crazy stuff like that. To me, like I said, biblically speaking, that's crazy. You don't bring anybody into the sanctity of it. I think the church should teach, and I think some churches do. I do know some churches do actually teach the godly value of sex. And when I say the godly value of sex, the way Christ intended it for it to happen, the way God intended it for it to happen between the male and the female in the privacy of their home, so forth and so on. However, the Bible does not tell you how to have sex. It don't tell you about positions or anything like that. And some people, because of that, churches, they say, well, that's taboo. They talk about oral sex and stuff like that. They won't talk about any of that stuff. And it leads people to wonder, well, what do we do as Christians? Can we do that? Should we do that? Is it a sin to do that with your husband and your wife? I would say to you that, and this is going to be controversial when I say this, the Bible speaks about oral sex. If you're familiar,
I'm about to say, what does it say? You see, we both leaned in, like, what does it say?
Okay. The Bible speaks, and if you look in the Psalms of Solomon, in the Psalms of Solomon, there's one in there that said that her breast satisfied me. When he's talking about his beloved, her breast satisfied me. How can a woman's breast satisfy a man unless he's fondling and put his mouth on him or something to that degree?
Yeah.
And you got to think about it. When you talk about oral sex, I mean, we only think about vaginal and, penis.
Oh, yeah, because that threw me for a loop.
But in the real sense of the world, if you even putting your mouth on her breast, that's actually oral sex.
Interesting.
That is, in today's society, people say, oh, no, it ain't. Think about it. That is oral.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree or disagree.
Okay, but I will tell you this. What anyone do in their bedroom, it ain't none of my business. It's really not. As long as they're not hurting or harming each other, it's none of my business. And the church, I'm sorry, go ahead. But I want to filibuster this.
No, I definitely agree with that. But the problem that I see is that no one's teaching anybody anything except for these stars, the music, the lyrics, you could learn the porn, whatever. It's not the one-on-one relationships that you have with real human beings that you see. It's everything you see on TV. And these kids are becoming overly sexualized. Kids are getting pregnant at like 13. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about anything at 13. I didn't even
I mean,
know.
it's crazy because I mean, you guys said it in a nutshell. It's not being taught. It's really not. And by not being taught, a lot of people are getting their cues from other sources. Now, I don't know if you want me to kind of inform you about, some things that should be. I don't know if that's the way you want this call to go, but if you just,
Okay, so before you say that, I wasn't
okay.
even gonna talk about myself. However,
Mhm.
so I'm one of the few people I know that's still waiting to have sex until I get married, right?
Okay.
I go back and forth every day. Now, let me say this on the podcast. I'm subject to change my mind. I just want to throw that out there.
Hmm.
But it wasn't because, yes, I grew up in the church, but it wasn't because my mom or my dad or anybody preached or taught to me to wait. It was me looking around at certain circumstances in my life, and I was like, what's the one common denominator around everybody that I see? They had sex early, they had kids, it stopped their life. So I was like, okay, so if I want to make it out of here, this is what I have to do. So that was my path, and my relationship with God stopped me from wanting to have sex before getting married. Now that I'm 32, didn't think it was going to take this long. So I have this conversation with Sierra often, like there's no class, there's no conversation in church about, they'll tell you to wait. They'll say God will bring your husband, but there's no gold star at the end of the rainbow or no gold star for waiting. You waited because that's something you're supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
And even when you do get married, reality I'll have to face is it might not be pleasurable when I do get married just because I waited. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had in church regarding maybe the church is scared because they're thinking that's an open invitation. Like if I teach you these things, here's an open invitation. But you can put parameters around it. You could say, so me and Sierra, we took a marriage class for singles, right? So if you're going to teach a marriage class, a class on sex, it could be, okay, like add it to premarital counseling, or, add it to where, or do it for the different stages. So I'm doing it for singles. This is in the parameters of being single. Then I'm going to do it for someone engaged. I'm going to do it for someone married. It can be taught.
Yeah. And then because it hasn't been taught, what happened is we got a lot of people now who are in what I call sexual confusion.
Mm-hmm.
The sexual confusion that they're dealing with is what would cause you, Ebony, to make a statement such as it may not be pleasurable based on what? Because what happens is this: sexual confusion breeds because when you really know what the sexual experience is supposed to be about, biblically, that was actually the consummation of the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
The marriage wasn't a marriage until after that night when they came in and they consummated the marriage. That was pretty much like signing the contract, so to speak. Now, think about this. Would you go make a major purchase and don't sign a contract? You wouldn't do that. There's a whole lot of things we have to sign a contract, but every time you are having sex with someone else that is not your spouse, you are signing a contract and don't know the term. You don't know everything about that person, and you actually transferring spirit. Think about it. I think, Ebony, I think you said you never had that experience. Ebony, Sierra, I don't know if you have. But with that said, you think about like when a person is in sexual, having sex, you get to that climax, you're temporarily insane. You are temporarily insane. At that point in time, you're pretty much out of your mind. That's one of the most euphoric feelings you'll ever feel physically. I mean, people say drugs and all that stuff, but I'm talking about a natural euphoria. And you're so vulnerable. You're at your most vulnerable state at that time. And spirits actually transfer. You look at any religion, even satanic religions, all of them wrap around some type of sexual transfer of energies because those are spirits. And these are some of the things that need to be taught. So when you have that virgin male and that virgin female, and they finally get together, and this is the first time for each other, they can make that experience for themselves and grow themselves. First time may not be pleasurable, but they have a lifetime to learn each other's body and grow in that experience. However, sexual confusion, you got that person who's been around with a few people, the other person been around with the first few people, and they come together and they say, well, that wasn't that great. It wasn't that great compared to what? The only way you can say it's not that great is because you got something to compare it with. That's the confusion. And the person or the guy that you was with 6 months ago, and he took you to the moon when y'all had that experience, that was a roll of the dice. If you were with him 5 or 6 more times, he may not take you there every time. Maybe he will, but that's just a roll of the dice. But any two people, when they come together in a marriage situation, they got lifelong to learn each other. You can learn each other's bodies till you can get each other where you need to go on a regular basis.
So, not to change the subject, but one of our questions that we asked to, because not to throw this all on the church, saying it's the church's responsibility, it's also the parents' responsibility to educate their kids. I have a couple of questions. So one question is, what do you think about the Black community specifically not educating their kids on sex? I think I was talking to Sierra and I was like, I know my parents didn't talk to me about sex. The only thing they said is don't do it. And if you talk to my dad, he swears up and down he said something, but I don't remember. So there was no conversation. So one, I want to know, did you talk to your kids about sex? I'm not too in depth. How did that conversation go? But, you know, do you think it was helpful? And also, what do you think about why the Black community doesn't educate their kids as much as other communities?
Well, first of all, you said, did I tell my kids? I thought I did, but I don't think I did a great job.
Okay.
And you know why? Because my parents really didn't do a great job with me. You know, I remember my father, when he said something about a prophylactic. I'm like, what? Prophylactic? Do you guys know what a prophylactic is? I didn't know what prophylactic was.
You're asking me, is it a condom?
Yeah, but
I didn't know.
Okay.
I never heard that word.
Okay.
Oh, you talking about?
That's what I thought it was. I was like,
and I didn't even, when he said that, I'm like, oh, you mean a rubber?
how old were you?
Oh gosh, I was about 23
Oh,
and married.
and married.
I was already married.
Too late then.
Exactly. But he said it in like a general conversation, like I knew already. So you got to think about it. A lot of our parents didn't because they weren't told. And even with me, I wasn't told. And when I tried to tell my kids, it was awkward. But I'm finding out now that they're grown that they already knew. But by the time I was talking to them, they knew so much more than what I was trying to tell them. My youngest son, that y'all actually know, he said, no, Dad, you didn't say anything to me. I said, I didn't, because he's the youngest of 3 boys. I thought I did. He said, no. I'm like, oh, sorry. but we didn't. It was an awkward it was such an awkward conversation. And I do want to say this. You kind of said this early on. You said about the church. It's not really the church's primary role. It actually is the home. It should start in the home, and the church should be reinforcing it.
Yep.
Because think about this. I tried to use this analogy. When you're driving, you're learning to drive. The school, somebody's teaching you how to drive. That's your home should be teaching you about sex. The church tells you the whens and the wheres, just like the state tells you the when and the where about driving. The state tells you when you can drive, you got provisionals, you can't drive at this time. So it tells you the when and the where. The home should be telling you the how. And the two should be connected because I think we agree, the church is very influential on the home. It can influence. So, you know, there should be some adult education prepping parents to be able to talk to their children.
That'd be a good course.
Yeah,
That's
prepping
right.
them to get it.
If the church doesn't do it, if the parents don't do it, I'm learning from friends. I'm learning from videos.
Exactly.
It's going to happen.
That's the problem. And your kids said they already knew by the time you said it because they learned it from somewhere else, from somebody else. And it may not be who you want your children to learn it from.
Or correct information.
And one of the things now that I'm dealing with, and you guys are going to be dealing with it even more so when you guys decide, get married, have children. Think about it. When I was young, learning about sex on the street, we had like magazines. I remember I had a friend of mine and he went to Catholic school and he would get some of like the Playboy magazines. We'd go up in the room and look at the pictures. Now we're looking at pictures. Now They're looking at videos
Mm-hmm.
in real time on their mobile phone. Can you imagine what your kids are going to be looking at?
I
Nothing.
can't. Sierra said, I said, I
No
can't.
laptops,
Sierra
no
said
phones,
nothing. Cut
nothing.
off.
Read a book.
Okay. You think,
No, but
It's
look,
not
realistically,
reality, though.
yeah. I know it's going to be bad. Oh, I'm sorry. I know it's going to be bad. It's going to get worse. But with the education, as you said, if the parents are educated on how to
Mhm.
have those conversations with their children early enough, the
Mhm.
right time, and then the church can help enforce it, then it's a village with these children. And it's not just letting the media.
Yes. Because it was meant to be beautiful. Is meant to be and should be a beautiful experience and not recreational. What you're doing is, when premarital sex is just recreational sex. Even to the place now where a lot of relationships is pretty much assumed that we're going to be sexually active. I mean,
Mhm.
Ebony's a rare breed. She's a rare breed now. Even to the place now where some people will mock her because of the stand she takes.
I'm sure some people do. Most people are like, "Oh, that's awesome," but that's pretty much.
I mean, you think about it, it's things have turned around so much that a young lady like you know, look, attractive young lady, Christian values, when you want to do the right thing, and someone will look at you like, well, I don't do nothing for her. I don't have to teach her. Man, she ain't got no experience. To me, that's ridiculous. But that's how things are now. Where it's flipped. Now, back in my day,
Oh yeah, I'm still
you
low on the totem pole now. Still low
but
on the totem
I'm
pole.
gonna tell you, years ago, you was on top. I mean, men would go and sow all their wild oats, so to speak. They would be with the party girls, the girls who were just, just giving it up and everything. But when they settled around, they wanted you.
Mhm.
You were the one. But now it's just, it's like it's turning around. Which I mean, and maybe I'm becoming an old fogey now because that's to me that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
It
and this is
doesn't
a
make
different
sense.
conversation too, but there's not a lot of men in the church or
Hmm.
I don't want to be very general when I say this. I mean, there's men in the church, but actually really trying to be careful with my words.
Just go ahead, just say it.
That's it. Look,
That's
if I gave you the definition of WAP, you can give.
Exactly. He was straight up with it. I was like, what?
Sierra was not ready. And
I was not ready at all.
I'll just say there's not enough men in the church who are really committed to Jesus like they say they are. So,
Yeah, I mean, and that is
Yeah.
that
and
is.
then
And you,
I
go
think
ahead.
that's true, but I think it's also both ways too.
it's true. That's true.
And I will say it can be not impossible, but it's hard because you have so many allures. I mean, men and women. You got so
Mhm.
many avenues. I mean, like Ebony, the stance you take, that got to be challenging. Like you said, you don't even know if you resign to hold out. That's challenging because there's so many things pulling you another way. You're still human, you
Mhm.
know. I mean, yes, you got Christ in your life, but Christ doesn't force our will. He tells us right or wrong, but our flesh is still trying to dictate some things also. So let's be real about that. There's so many things there to allure you, and it's just getting worse and worse. I mean, like I said, with that video, going back to the video, it's just out there, and it's like out there to a place where this is commonplace. So I understand the confusion. I understand you guys even having this question and wonder why. What can we do? A lot of things when we discover this, and this is why I applaud the millennial generation. You guys will challenge. I always say I taught my children to ask questions. You guys are asking questions, pushing the envelope, and making the hard conversations come to the table and taking off the pretense so nobody can duck them. Now,
Mhm.
myself, I'm telling you, there's a whole lot of people I mean, I may even get some people in my, in my demographic groups. They hear this, hear me on that. They say, "You said what? Yeah, come on. You know, they got a point, and you know what I said was right.
Mhm.
Or not even right, but you can at least relate to it because you don't have to agree with everything I'm saying, but you can kind of relate to some of the things I'm saying. But we're just not comfortable, and you're making us uncomfortable. But that uncomfort needs to happen. I made a statement to my wife and I. We was talking yesterday, and I was saying to her, somebody has to be willing to be uncomfortable to make others comfortable and
Mhm.
to actually get you to understand that a parent makes themselves uncomfortable so their children will have a sense of comfort. So by you guys asking these questions, does it make me uncomfortable? I mean, when I say me, I'm talking about people of my generation.
I was like, you don't seem
Somewhat,
uncomfortable. So.
Not at all.
because you know what, I've got to the place, and I'm gonna tell you, my wife and I, we're thinking about doing a podcast. So I'm gonna have on my podcast, and we're gonna talk about some things, because I'll let y'all know when that happens, because we have a lot of unbridled truth. We have came up through a whole lot of shenanigans. I'm not talking about within our marriage. We have seen the church from like our infancy on up, and we have did a whole lot of things. We had to come to know ourselves. So in other words, I'm so comfortable in my own skin. At the end of the day, you can call me what you want. Long as God is calling me his child, I really don't care what you have to say. I really don't, because I have to meet up to him. I cannot satisfy everybody, because people are fickle. Once I start to satisfy you, you will change your agenda. And I don't know if I can meet that, but God is the only one who changes not.
That's an interesting point. And not that this podcast is about that, but that's something that I am learning and had to learn too, is even though I grew up in the church and grew up Christian, all these principles and values you have to learn for yourself. Like, do I actually believe this?
Mm-hmm.
What does the Bible actually say? Because a lot of stuff that we've learned and parents said, they just said because their parents said, and then you go back and you look and you're like, that's not even in the scripture. So
Exactly.
that's something that I'm working on and working through. And so I am honored that you came on our podcast and you had this conversation with us. And first of all, you know what WAP is. That's amazing. Because I was scared that, honestly, I'm gonna let Sierra.
That's why I was like, okay, WAP, I'm not going to tell you. You can look that up. I was trying to be like.
Let me say something real quick,
Under the
ladies.
radar.
Think about this. If I don't know, how can I minister to it? See, that's another thing the church has done. We've put our head under the carpet
Mm-hmm.
and act like we don't know what's going on. How can I minister to it if I don't know? Now, I'm not saying indulge. No, of course, I'm not going to indulge. I'm not going to her concert. I'm not going to be blasting the music. No, but I have to know about some things if I'm going to minister to. I'm going to tell you this. And I'm going to let you guys do your little, what you have to do, because I'm going to give it back to you. I'm going to tell you what I've done. What I've done on my secular job, I deal with mostly young men, men. And I asked a question one time. And I told him, I said, I kept seeing this word, and I don't know what this word means, and I don't know if it's an acronym or not, but I don't know if somebody's spelling it wrong or what. Somebody please tell me what it was. And you know what it was? It was MILF. I thought it was milk. But it was MILF. And then, first of all, when I asked these guys, what's a MILF? They said, she's a MILF. What is a MILF? First of all, after they stopped laughing for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, but I said they probably started laughing at first.
Oh, God. Yes. And then somebody told me. And then once they told me, I sent them all on like a 10-minute break, because I just had to decompress. I'm like, okay, I asked. But my point is, if I don't ask, if I don't try to get a pulse on what you guys need, how can I minister to it? I just come from that vein. Let me get this back to you guys.
No, I think that's great. Especially for me, my dad is a minister too. And so like just people being willing to have those vulnerable conversations, I think is much needed in the church and outside of the church. So that's my take.
But I will say this, I want to let you know, in defense of your dad, it is hard. It's harder for us to talk to our children about it.
Mm.
He's a whole special breed.
Sometimes it can be a little harder. Okay.
Yes,
guys, I'm really honored to be in this call. I just want to let you know that. I'm really honored.
We're honored to have you. As Ebony said, thank you so much for coming on last minute to talk to us about starting off about the video and how our young adults and teenagers and preteens are getting taught by the media about sex, and then the conversation about how the church and the families need to work together and somehow erase the stigma, the taboo of talking about something that's so natural that should be held on until marriage. But also, if you don't wait until marriage, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you're the worst person on earth. As you said,
That's
our
correct.
flesh does sometimes take control.
Flesh is weak.
So, yes. So we thank you. But before we get off, we want to give you a chance. We know you're a podcaster, to plug This is the plug chance. Plug your podcast. Let everybody know where they can listen to you. If you're on Instagram, Facebook, any social media, how they can reach out to you if they have any other questions and want to continue the conversation.
Okay, great. Again, thank you, Ebony and Sierra. I really appreciate this time. My podcast is called Ripping the Veil. Ripping the Veil. Any of you who know the story of Jesus Christ and when he died, how the veil was ripped, it kind of come along that premise. So with that said, I take time to talk about issues that are veils in our life now, and we take those issues and start talking about them, layer by layer. Ripping the Veil. I'm on Spotify and also on Apple Podtunes. You guys correct me because sometimes I'm
Apple
sitting wrong.
Podcast. It's still
Apple Podcast. I'm on Apple Podcasts. Also, you can reach me on Facebook. I think I have a YouTube channel because I have someone producing it for me, and soon I will be also having a Instagram account. So I'm still working on it. I want to let you guys know, everyone who's listening to this, that I'm actually much younger than Ebony and Sierra when it comes to the podcast world.
Oh, the podcast world.
Oh, okay. I thought he was coming for us in general. I was
know,
like,
right?
okay,
All right.
our listeners know. We young tenderonis over here.
No, but
You
when
got
it comes
me.
to podcasts, and
Okay.
I'm younger than them. I'm a juvenile to them. So again, I applaud them for letting me come on. I'll probably be reaching out to them, and they'll probably, hopefully, helping me out on my podcast as well. So listen
Absolutely.
for that. So anyone, please jump on and give me your likes, your comments. We want to just take it to another level. Thank you,
All
ladies. I
right.
really appreciate it.
You're
Sounds
welcome.
good. Sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for listening to this episode. If you want to reach out to us, you know how to get to us at The Real Play Podcast on Instagram or at therealplaypodcast@gmail.com. You can reach me at Raven with Love.
And mine is Ebony D as in David and Johnson. One last thing before we go, guys. I know we were supposed to release. We said we were going to have a marriage series. We're still going to release those episodes. We just wanted to bring this to you. They'll be coming out, so be on the lookout for those. Oh, one more thing. So we have a ton of episodes coming out, guys. But Sierra and I, we are taking a break. You'll notice in October, and so for a couple of weeks, a month, a couple of weeks, and
Sometime.
a couple of weeks, and we'll be back for
Changing
season 2.
some things up for season
We'll change
2.
some things up. You guys will be excited.
Surprises.
Some surprises for you. But we'll still be around, so keep in touch. We're still here. So, all right. We love you guys. Bye.
Bye.
What's up? It's Sierra.
Hey, it's Ebony.
And welcome to the Real Play Podcast.